10 years of grinding, sacrifice, and a relentless hunger to build something from nothing. Jason Parker, millionaire CEO and self-made king of a pizza empire, stood hunched at the stainless steel sink in the back of his own restaurant. His sleeves rolled up, arms slick with grease, the scent of garlic and melted cheese clinging to his skin like a second layer. The neon light above him buzzed, casting a faint, flickering glow that felt more like a warning than ambiance. Water gushed steadily from the tap, masking the rhythmic percussion of knives against cutting boards behind him. He bent to scrub the floor, his movements deliberate, his thoughts miles away. A new hire beside him leaned over, gently correcting Jason's grip on the mop, not realizing who he was. There was no protest. Jason let him. To the staff, he was just another guy on the floor tonight, blending into the muscle of the operation. From the dining room, laughter floated through, interrupted by a customer's voice. "Pizza's been tasting better lately. Can't figure out why." Jason's neck stiffened at those words. Something about them lodged in his spine. He turned his head slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through him. That comment. It was familiar, but wrong. Like hearing a song with one note off key. He flashed back to the day he opened his first location, heart pounding, the scent of fresh dough and basil thick in the air. That memory was sacred. Now it felt threatened. An older staff member brushed past him, murmuring absent-mindedly, "Miguel's been using his special recipe again." Jason froze. The words hit like a dull thud in his chest. No elaboration followed. He stood, eyes narrowing, filing the phrase away like a sharp object in a drawer. Something was breathing in this kitchen, unseen but not unnoticed, and he needed to find out what it was. Miguel barely acknowledged Jason as he approached the counter. Jason kept his tone neutral. "Pepperoni. Keep it simple." Flour clouded the air like a gentle snowfall as Miguel shaped the dough, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who knew the weight of repetition. Every gesture mirrored the company manual Jason had painstakingly crafted years ago. Nothing was out of place, until it was. From beneath the counter, Miguel's hand emerged holding a small, unlabeled dark glass bottle. Its shape unremarkable, but the liquid inside was anything but. Thick and viscous, it caught the light with a strange shimmer, black with a metallic gleam that didn't belong in any kitchen. Without hesitation, Miguel drizzled it across the pizza. The fluid moved like ink, staining the cheese and pepperoni as it settled into the crust. Instantly, the aroma shifted. Something sharp pierced through the warm comfort of tomato and mozzarella. It curled in Jason's nostrils, acrid, unfamiliar, chemical. "What's that?" Jason asked, voice low but steady. Miguel met his eyes. There was something behind them. A glint of challenge, or maybe pride. "Trade secret," he said coolly. He'd answered this before. Too easily. The bottle vanished back under the counter like a magician's final trick. Miguel resumed his work, unbothered, as if he hadn't just broken every rule Jason lived by. Jason watched every detail. The angle of Miguel's wrist, the smooth precision, the absence of doubt. This wasn't a mistake. It was muscle memory. The oven hissed open, releasing a wave of heat that blurred the air. Miguel slid the pizza in and returned moments later with the finished pie. The cheese shimmered golden, pepperoni edges curled and glistening. A masterpiece, visually. But Jason wasn't looking at beauty. He was searching for the fault line beneath it. He took a bite. First, the familiar flood of flavor. Tangy sauce, buttery crust, spiced meat. Then, beneath it all, a foreign note. Sharp, metallic, calculated. It was subtle, but undeniable. A tingling spread along his tongue, not painful, but present. He smiled, forced. "That's good," he said evenly. Miguel nodded, chest rising with quiet satisfaction. "Told you." Jason set the slice down slowly. The taste lingered, refusing to fade. It wasn't just flavor. It was design. Engineered complexity that didn't come from natural ingredients. It left a signature, something synthetic that clung to the roof of his mouth. In 15 years of running this business, Jason had memorized every legal ingredient, every supplier, every formula. Nothing in his memory matched what now coated his senses. That realization settled like lead in his gut. Miguel moved calmly at the prep station, either unaware or pretending to be. Jason didn't blink. He watched, and somewhere deep in his chest, something twisted. Not just suspicion, a betrayal. And betrayal, Jason knew, had a flavor all its own. Another bite, and the tingling returned. That subtle, electric sensation crawling across Jason's tongue like a whisper he couldn't ignore. His fingers curled against the cold countertop, the metal pressing into his skin. What began as curiosity had deepened into something heavier, something darker. A weight pressed on his chest as if he were standing at the edge of something too large to see in full. Between the crust and the sauce, something was buried. And he wasn't sure he wanted to uncover it. The next morning, the flavor was still with him, lodged in memory like a splinter. When Jason stepped into the kitchen, Miguel spotted him instantly. A grin crept across the cook's face. "Today's even better," he said, already reaching for the dough, his hands moving with the confidence of a man rehearsing a role he'd played to perfection. As he shaped the crust, Miguel spoke like a man telling a well-worn tale. "Local supplier. Been working with them over 4 months now. Customers can't get enough." His tone brimmed with pride. Jason leaned on the counter casually, letting his expression slip into something easy, nonchalant. 4 months, huh? Sounds like you've had plenty of time to dial it in." Miguel nodded without looking up. "Best call I ever made. They've got things you won't find anywhere else." His voice was full of certainty, the kind that comes when a man believes he's untouchable. Jason asked another question, something vague about where Miguel had found the supplier. Miguel answered smoothly. No pause, no hesitation. He was either the world's best liar or genuinely believed he was in control. Behind them, a faint sound broke the rhythm, the scuff of a shoe. Jason turned slightly, catching a glimpse of a young prep cook. The guy's eyes locked momentarily with another line worker across the kitchen. A glance passed between them, sharp and knowing. Not confusion, recognition. Jason let it slide but logged it away, a red thread in the growing web of uncertainty. 4 months. That detail struck like a hammer. 4 months of this unknown additive slipping past the radar, untested, unapproved. 4 months of strangers consuming something they didn't know. The implications spooled out behind his eyes. It wasn't just an ingredient. It was a liability. And a betrayal. Later, during a lull in the shift, Marcus leaned against the counter. His voice dropped an octave, weighed with something more personal. "Miguel's always experimenting," he said. There was a flicker of something behind the words, half respect, half concern. "Corporate doesn't know." Jason angled his head. "You tried it." Marcus's lips twitched at the edges. Maybe once. He didn't look Jason in the eye. That told Jason more than the words did. The room felt tighter. Air heavy. From across the station, a younger cook piped up. "Tastes good. Customers eat it up." Another snorted. "Yeah? You even know where it comes from?" The kid shrugged. "Don't need to. It works." The older cook shook his head, muttering something Jason couldn't catch. The moment passed, quick and sharp like a knife's edge, but its presence lingered. Jason didn't say a word. He'd learned that silence was often more revealing than confrontation. The split was clear. Some saw Miguel as a visionary. Others saw him as reckless. And Jason was seeing a line being crossed. As the shift rolled on, Jason picked up on every change. Marcus's guarded tone. The way younger staff moved with a little more speed, a little less chatter. Everyone had noticed. Some accepted it. Others feared it. Jason feared the cost. Mid-shift, the kitchen moved like clockwork. Orders clipped, pans clanged, heat billowed from the burners. From his spot by the pass, Jason watched Miguel. This time, he wasn't making pizza. A skillet steamed with pasta sauce and linguine. Jason knew what was coming before it happened. Miguel's hand moved with precision, dipping beneath the counter and rising with the same dark glass bottle. No label, no markings. He tilted it, and that, now familiar stream flowed into the sauce. The aroma shifted instantly. Jason felt it in his sinuses before his brain caught up. Tomato and garlic overtaken by something chemical, something engineered. The sting, the metallic edge. The pattern was repeating. At the corner of his eye, a prep cook noticed too. The kid's gaze caught on the bottle, widened for a moment, not in surprise, but in recognition. Then he looked away and chopped faster. Nobody said anything. The noise of the kitchen pressed down, filling the space where questions should have lived. Jason knew now, it wasn't just pizza. The secret ingredient had made its way into multiple dishes. That changed everything. More exposure, more danger, more risk. He etched the thought into his mental ledger. Multiple menu items. Unauthorized additive. Widespread use. The stockroom was dim and close. Air thick with flour, canned tomatoes, bleach. Jason moved silently between shelves, eyes scanning for truth. On a bottom rack, half hidden behind olive oil drums, he saw it. A second bottle. He pulled it free. The label had been scratched off, adhesive clinging in tattered remnants. He twisted the cap. The scent struck like a blow, chemical, acrid, nothing that should exist in a kitchen. It burned the back of his throat. His stomach turned. A sound broke the stillness. Footsteps, deliberate, approaching. Jason jammed the cap back on and shoved the bottle into the shadows. His pulse thudded in his ears. Sweat slid down his spine. The steps stopped at the door. And for the first time in a long time, Jason Parker, the man who'd built an empire with his bare hands, felt hunted in his own house. Miguel filled the doorway, his silhouette etched in shadow. His eyes swept the room slowly, calculating until they landed on Jason. "Looking for something?" His voice was calm, measured, but carried an unmistakable weight. Jason stood straighter, pasting on a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just checking stock," he replied lightly, casual as breath. Miguel's gaze held a moment longer, testing, searching, before he stepped aside. Jason walked past him, every step tight with adrenaline, the phantom sting of that chemical smell still burning at the edge of his senses. Behind him, the door to the stockroom clicked shut. That night, Jason lay awake in the darkness, staring at the ceiling as shadows stretched across the walls. The tingling aftertaste clung stubbornly to his tongue, a reminder of everything he couldn't yet prove. The silence of his home did nothing to quiet the noise in his mind. Orders shouted, plates clattering, laughter echoing from dining tables. Faces flickered in his thoughts. Children giggling over shared slices, parents breaking bread, lovers leaning close, all unaware. Unaware of what was being served. The images looped endlessly until they smeared together, a blur of innocence set against a backdrop of doubt. Jason sat up, the weight of responsibility like iron in his chest. He crossed the room to his desk and opened his laptop. The glow lit his face as he accessed the company's supplier database. His fingers flew over the keys, entering search terms with increasing urgency. He scrolled through the official vendors. Flour, cheese, meats, sauces, all accounted for. But nothing. No trace of the local supplier Miguel had mentioned. No matching names, no regional businesses. Miguel's source didn't exist in their system, because it wasn't real. Jason stared at the screen, his heart sinking. The confirmation he hadn't wanted was now plain. This supplier, this substance, was operating completely outside their regulations. He shut the laptop, but sleep never came. By morning, the darkness hadn't lifted. It had only changed shape. Back in the kitchen, steam and heat coiled around him, but Jason's focus had narrowed. He found Marcus prepping onions and approached with practiced ease. "You know Miguel's supplier. Got an address?" he asked. Tone light, like a passing curiosity. Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Miguel handles all that himself, says it's easier direct." No hesitation. It was treated like routine. Jason moved down the line and caught Sarah, the quiet prep cook, as she unloaded vegetables. He kept his voice low. "You've seen the stuff he uses, right?" Her hand froze over a box of tomatoes. She glanced toward the swinging kitchen doors, then leaned closer. "It's not food," she whispered. "It smells wrong. I've been cooking 10 years. Nothing in a kitchen should smell like that." Jason nodded slowly. "He says it's safe." Sarah's expression didn't change, but her voice softened. "He says a lot, but something about it, I don't know. It makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong just being near it." Her unease echoed his own, but now it had a voice not his. Jason thanked her quietly and kept moving. The weight of her words stayed with him. During a brief pause in the rush, Jason approached Danny, wiping down counters. "You've worked with Miguel a while, yeah?" he began. "Ever get to use that bottle?" Danny let out a short, sharp laugh. "No one touches it but him, ever. He pours it himself, like it's sacred or something." Jason's brow lifted. "Why?" Danny's smirk faded. "Because if you ask too many questions, he snaps. Not annoyed, angry. Like you're crossing some line you didn't know existed." He glanced toward the kitchen, where Miguel moved with the ease of authority. "You can joke about a lot here," Danny said quietly. "But not that bottle. Everyone knows. No one talks." Jason felt the pattern crystallizing. This wasn't creativity. It wasn't culinary innovation. This was obsession. Secrecy guarded by fear. A line had been drawn in the kitchen, and no one dared cross it. But Jason would. He followed the first lead that afternoon, a supplier listed near an industrial park about 10 kilometers from the restaurant. The scent of flour and yeast greeted him, familiar and oddly soothing. But his chest was tight with anticipation. He approached the manager and showed the photo of the dark bottle. The man barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "Never seen it. We only handle regulated goods. That's not one of ours." Jason pressed. "Could it be from a small batch? Experimental?" The man's face hardened. "We'd remember something like that. If it's not on our list, we don't carry it." The rejection landed like a slap. Jason thanked him and stepped back into the chill air. The sun was dropping, casting long shadows. His breath fogged as he stared at the next address. Part of him said to wait. Be rational. Rest. But another part, the one that had built an empire from nothing, refused to stop. He started the car. The second supplier gave the same answer, as did the third. Rejection piled on rejection. Each one chipped away at hope. But then, at the third stop, a narrow, herb-scented warehouse, a young clerk studied the photo on Jason's phone. She froze for the briefest moment. Her eyes locked with his, sharp and wary. Then she leaned closer. "You should stop looking for this," she whispered. "It's better that way." Her words sliced through the still air. Jason's pulse spiked. "Why?" he asked. Her face shut down like a locked vault. "I can't help you," she muttered, turning back to the shelf. Jason waited, hoping she'd change her mind, but the silence between them solidified. Final. He left, the door clicking closed behind him, his breath tight in his lungs. And though the city still buzzed around him, Jason felt something shift. He wasn't chasing a mystery anymore. He was walking into a war. The wind had picked up, sharp and biting, threading through Jason's jacket like icy fingers. The parking lot felt off. Too still, too silent. The kind of silence that presses on your skin. He could sense it, the feeling of being watched. Not directly, not obviously, but close enough that he could almost hear someone else's breath mingling with his own. He spun around quickly. Rows of parked cars sat motionless under the dim sky. Nothing moved, no figures, no sound. Still, the sensation didn't leave him. It stuck like damp clothes. As he unlocked the car and slid into the driver's seat, a thought formed and rooted deep in his mind. This wasn't just another bad lead. Someone didn't want him asking questions. The eighth supplier was different. The building reeked of spice and cardboard, the air heavy with a shudder of pallets being moved in the back. Jason approached the counter, sliding his phone forward with the image of the dark bottle. The warehouse manager's brow wrinkled. Someone came asking about this a while back. Jason felt his pulse hitch. "Do you remember who?" The man leaned back, voice lowering. "Strange guy. Said he wanted something to enhance flavor, but didn't care if it was you. No, legal." Jason's face didn't change. He kept his voice level. "And you told him?" "We said no. We don't deal with that kind of stuff." The manager narrowed his eyes. He didn't seem surprised, just muttered something about finding a more flexible source and left. Jason didn't need a photo now. He saw Miguel in his mind, walking out of this very place with that same quiet defiance he wore in the kitchen. The image struck with conviction. He thanked the man and stepped out into the cold again. The air had shifted. No longer just chilly, but sharp, invasive. Every noise startled. The screech of a truck's brakes, the gravel crunching under his own boots. His chest tightened, heart hammering not from exertion, but realization. This wasn't just about culinary boundaries anymore. This wasn't even about breaking rules. This was about something dangerous enough that even legal vendors turned it away. He reached his car, gripping the steering wheel with frozen fingers. The road ahead had narrowed, and at the end of it stood Miguel, guarding something that now felt less like a secret and more like a weapon. That night, Jason returned to the restaurant. Everything looked the same, smelled the same. But under the surface, tension curled like smoke around Miguel. The chef moved with guarded precision. The bottle remained within reach, as if it were a part of him. His shoulders hunched ever so slightly, his gaze flickering, defensive. Every move was measured. When someone walked too close, Miguel subtly shifted, positioning himself between them and the bottle. Jason watched, heart heavy with confirmation. It wasn't paranoia. It was protection. He stepped forward casually. "Where's your supplier based?" he asked, voice light, disinterested. Miguel didn't meet his eyes. His jaw tensed before loosening into a casual shrug. "Around here, nothing far, small operation." Jason smiled, covering the tension in his own voice. "Small operations can be the best." Miguel gave a vague nod, already turning back to his station. But Jason wasn't done. That single line, "around here," was all he needed. A thin thread, but enough to pull. The next day, Jason followed the trail. The address Miguel had hinted at led him to a crumbling industrial park. Gray skies loomed above rows of deteriorating buildings. At the end of a narrow lane, he slowed the car. A rusted gate greeted him, vines twisting through the chain links like veins. A faded sign dangled on a single bolt, "For lease." The paint was peeling. The structure beyond looked hollow. Jason sat there for a moment, the cold thickening in his lungs. He dialed the number on the sign. A woman answered, professional and brisk. "That unit's been vacant over a year," she said. "No tenants. No subleases. Nothing." Her words hit like a gut punch. Jason's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles white. He forced his voice. "Calm." "Thank you," he said, then hung up. The gate swayed in the wind. A low groan escaped its hinges. Jason stared at the empty lot. Miguel hadn't just been vague. He had lied. There was no supplier, no address. Just a wall Miguel had built from falsehoods and secrecy. And Jason was now staring straight at its foundation. Determined, he arranged a meeting under the guise of routine quality assurance. But nothing about his visit to Dr. Emma Rodriguez's lab was routine. He carried the vial like it contained a live fuse. Absolute confidentiality, he said, placing it on her counter. Emma adjusted her glasses, lifting the bottle with caution. She turned it slowly, studying the faint, oily sheen beneath the glass. Her brow furrowed. "This doesn't look food grade," she murmured. Jason said nothing. Emma uncapped the bottle. She brought it close to her nose, then recoiled. Her expression hardened. "Definitely not anything I've seen in a culinary context. I'll run a full panel." Jason met her eyes. What he saw in them wasn't scientific curiosity. It was warning. She scribbled a label, not a name, just a number. "Might take a few days, and Jason..." She hesitated. "Don't talk to anyone about this until you hear from me." He nodded, throat dry. The hallway outside felt colder than before. Driving away, Jason replayed that split second when she pulled away from the vial, the slight crease forming between her brows. He didn't know what her lab would find, but for the first time, he accepted the truth. He might already be too late. While waiting, Jason returned to the kitchen. He didn't pry. He listened. Sarah, slicing mushrooms, murmured, "He told me once. The company wouldn't understand this." Like he was protecting something they'd ruin if they knew. Later, at the dish station, Danny added, "Ask him where it comes from. He shuts you down. Push harder. He gets angry. Not annoyed, real angry." Jason let them talk, offering nothing. But his eyes never left Miguel. From across the room, he watched as Miguel took a sip of coffee. His gaze flitted across the kitchen, scanning, measuring. When a server stepped too close to his prep station, Miguel shifted subtly, placing himself between her and the bottle. It wasn't about secrecy anymore. It was control. At one point, Miguel's hand brushed the glass bottle, and a subtle tension flashed across his face. His lips pressed together in a tight, instinctive line, like muscle memory forged in secrecy. Just the thought of someone else touching it was enough to set his jaw. Jason watched closely, memorizing every cue, the defensive stance, the constant visual sweeps, the unconscious shields. These were not the tells of a man confident in innovation. These were the signs of someone guarding a threat. Each moment added weight to what Jason already feared. This wasn't about creative freedom. Miguel wasn't hiding something from corporate. He was hiding it from everyone. Because exposure didn't just mean embarrassment or discipline. It meant danger. Then Jason's phone vibrated. Dr. Rodriguez. Her voice, sharp and urgent, cut through the silence. "You need to come in." "Now?" Minutes later, Jason stood under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights in her lab. Emma leaned over a folder on the counter, one hand pressing it down like she was bracing herself. She opened the file to the first page. Sodium benzoate, off the charts, levels that exceed food safety limits by multiples. She flipped the page. Industrial-grade preservatives. And here, methylparaben. You know what this does? In high concentrations, it disrupts endocrine functions, causes liver damage, even organ failure, if the dosage is high enough. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Jason stared at the graphs, the red lines leaping into danger zones. His breath caught. Faces filled his mind. The families, the couples, the loyal customers who trusted his brand. The last slices they'd eaten weren't just food. They were laced with something that could kill. He closed the folder with shaking hands. There was no question left. This wasn't about a rogue chef or secret flavors. This was about stopping something deadly. That night, Jason sat in his car across the street from the restaurant. The engine off, the world outside framed by the windshield like a stage. Through the glass, he watched lives unfold. Families with strollers, kids laughing, couples chatting as they entered his restaurant. Each one a heartbeat away from tragedy. His hands clutched the steering wheel, knuckles white with pressure. Then the phone rang. Marcus. "Miguel's asking if you'll be in tomorrow," Marcus said. "He's got a new recipe. Says it's his best yet." Jason forced his voice even. Tell him I'll be there." The line went dead. Jason sat frozen. A little girl skipped ahead of her parents, glancing back briefly before vanishing inside. He watched her go, jaw clenched. Tomorrow wouldn't be about tasting anything. Tomorrow would be about ending it. He arrived early the next morning, the lab report folded like a weapon in his jacket pocket. He moved through the kitchen as always, calm, quiet, efficient. He prepped dough, wiped counters, and delivered plates. But every step carried the weight of a man preparing for confrontation. Through the lunch rush, Jason stayed watchful. Every time Miguel touched the bottle, he took note but held back. Then, mid-afternoon, as the last customers lingered over empty plates, Miguel approached the prep counter with a spark in his eyes. "This," he said, holding the bottle like a trophy, "is more perfect than ever." He tilted his hand. "Don't add anything," Jason said, his voice slicing through the room. "We need to talk." Miguel froze. Time paused with him. The kitchen stilled, and the only sound was the buzz of overhead lights. Jason stepped closer, the air between them taut. Miguel's smile cracked, confusion replaced with guarded calculation. "Now," Jason said again, this time firmer. Eyes turned. No one spoke. Jason pulled his phone and tapped the screen. The photo of the rusted gate and faded sign filled it. "I went there yesterday," Jason said. "The place you said your supplier was based. It's been vacant over a year." Color drained from Miguel's face. His mouth opened, but only a dry breath escaped. I don't know what you're talking about." Jason slid a folded document onto the stainless steel counter. "The lab report. Methylparaben," he said. "Do you know what that does?" Miguel's eyes flicked to the paper. His right hand trembled. Then, a pop. The cap on the bottle snapped loose. Whether by accident or pressure, Jason didn't know. But the smell filled the space instantly. Sharp, wrong, inescapable. Jason's voice cut through it. "I'm Jason Parker, CEO of this company." Miguel recoiled, stepping back. The bottle slipped from his hand, thudding against the tile before rolling. The liquid spilled, dark and viscous, releasing its poison into the air. "I only wanted to help," Miguel whispered. "It made the flavors stronger. People loved it. I didn't think—" "You didn't think about their lives," Jason said, his voice cold and unwavering. Miguel collapsed into a chair, tears blurring his eyes. He looked down at the spreading stain, as if the truth had bled out of him onto the floor. Silence. Only the soft hum of a refrigerator and the weight of stunned breath. Finally, Miguel spoke. 6 months ago, our sales dropped. People stopped coming. I thought it was over. I thought I was losing everything." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "At a food expo downtown, I met a man. He said he was a scientist. He talked about a natural safe flavor booster," Miguel continued, voice hollow. "Something not yet approved by the FDA, but widely used overseas. He swore it was harmless." Jason's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "He offered me a deal, cash only. We met in a parking lot behind a strip mall. $300 every 2 weeks. No paperwork, no receipts. Just a plain bottle in a brown paper bag." Miguel exhaled sharply, the memory curling bitter at the edges. "I told myself I was saving the restaurant, that it was worth it if it brought people back. And it did. Customers returned, smiling, complimenting the food. I needed to believe I was doing the right thing." Jason felt a storm brewing inside him, a war between rage at the recklessness and a deep ache for the desperation that had fueled it. "What's his name?" he asked, voice low, restrained. Miguel hesitated, then answered like confessing a sin. "Rodriguez, Tony Rodriguez." The name struck Jason like a shard of glass. Sharp, undeniable. Miguel continued, tone flattened like he was reading from a page soaked in regret. "He was careful. We never met in the same place twice. Sometimes a grocery store lot, sometimes behind a diner off the highway. He said it was to keep competitors from stealing his formula." Jason's eyes narrowed. Or to stay hidden from law enforcement. Miguel nodded slightly. He had papers, certificates with seals and signatures. They looked official. I thought it was legit. Just ahead of regulation. I wanted to believe that. Jason stepped closer, his voice like a blade. You turned my customers into test subjects. The words hit Miguel like a blow. His shoulders curled inward, eyes fixed on the spreading stain beneath the counter. Tony Rodriguez. Jason repeated the name silently. It wasn't just a lead anymore. It was a target. The kitchen felt smaller now, dense with the weight of consequence. The confrontation had moved beyond exposure. It was now about what came next. You'll leave today, Jason said, voice low but final. Miguel's eyes glistened. He nodded, small, childlike. I'm sorry, he whispered. Jason didn't respond. The apology sat between them, unable to bridge what had been broken. Miguel slowly packed his knives, each one wrapped in cloth as if it carried shame. He didn't look up again. Jason watched him go. The staff didn't speak, but their eyes followed. The kitchen door swung shut behind Miguel with a soft click that sounded like closure. Jason exhaled, but the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure. The danger hadn't left. Removing Miguel only severed one link. The supplier, Tony Rodriguez, was still out there, moving in shadows. And Jason wasn't done. The emergency meeting convened before dawn. Inside the company's conference room, tension buzzed like static. Around the table, the company's attorney, the operations director, Dr. Emma Rodriguez, and Jason himself. Emma's lab report lay open like a crime scene. We need a full recall, the attorney began, voice urgent. Every product served in the last 5 months, no exceptions. The operations director pushed back. That's thousands of meals across multiple locations. We don't have customer records for all of them. We can't reach everyone. Jason spoke, cutting through the debate. Then we go public. We contact the health department immediately. A heavy silence followed. The attorney leaned back. You understand this could destroy us, financially, legally. And hiding it will destroy us faster, Jason said. This isn't damage control. It's responsibility. Emma nodded. Transparency is your only way forward. It's how you start rebuilding trust. Jason looked around the table. We go public. We cooperate fully. No more secrets. Everyone understood the weight of those words. Later that week, Jason stood at the edge of the storage yard. The cold air bit his skin. Before him, employees in hazmat suits moved with deliberate care. Crates of the dark bottles were lifted and dumped one by one into red-lidded, hazardous waste bins. Glass cracked, liquid hissed. A chemical tang rose from the bin, sharp enough to sting the eyes. Jason didn't flinch. Arms crossed, he watched the final crate arrive. A worker hesitated. Jason gave a small nod. The last bottle dropped. The shatter echoed. The poison was gone, but the shadow it left remained. Days later, Jason climbed a narrow staircase to a modest apartment. The hallway smelled of cooking oil and laundry soap. Miguel answered the door. Behind him, a wall of family photos, birthdays, vacations, fragments of an ordinary life. His wife stood in the corner, silent, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. 2 children rushed to Miguel's side, wrapping their arms around him with a kind of unconditional love that made explanations unnecessary. Miguel looked at Jason. His eyes no longer held defiance, only the weight of a man who had already passed judgment on himself. Jason stepped inside and sat at the small kitchen table. The refrigerator hummed in the silence. You were wrong, Jason said finally. But I understand fear. I understand how it turns judgment into something desperate. Miguel's shoulders eased slightly. He didn't look up. Jason reached into his jacket and set an envelope on the table. Miguel looked at it, then back at Jason. It's a letter of recommendation, Jason said, sliding it forward. And an offer, a job in Phoenix. Miguel's hands didn't reach for the envelope right away, as if touching it too soon might cause it to vanish, like it wasn't real. Jason didn't press him. Instead, he continued, his voice firm but not cold. There are conditions. Strict supervision, mandatory retraining in food safety, and you'll start from the bottom, no shortcuts. Miguel's voice cracked. Why? Jason held his gaze. Because everyone deserves a chance to make things right. But it's up to you whether you use it. The room fell into a still, reverent hush. Miguel's wife looked up, her expression shifting. Less guarded, more open, a trace of hope flickering in her eyes. Miguel swallowed hard, finally reaching for the envelope. His fingers hovered, then gently touched the paper before lifting it into his lap. "Thank you," he whispered, the words thick in his throat. "I won't waste this. I promise." Jason extended his hand. Miguel hesitated only for a breath, then clasped it firmly. The handshake lingered. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. A fragile, mutual respect, built not on perfection, but honesty. In that moment, the shadow of the past months didn't disappear, but it thinned just enough to let some light through. 3 months later, Jason's phone buzzed on his desk. The message was short. "Miguel's doing great, follows every rule." Attached was a photo. Miguel, in a crisp white apron, stood beaming beside a pizza pulled fresh from the oven. Golden crust, bright toppings, clean, honest. Jason set the phone down and turned toward the window. Outside, the flagship restaurant pulsed with life. Lunch rush in full swing. Servers laughed. Customers leaned into conversations over warm plates. And behind the counter, he knew, a new system was in place. Staff could suggest new ideas, flavors, improvements, but everything went through safety checks before a single bite was served. It wasn't just policy. It was culture. Jason reflected on how close they'd come to collapse. Now, something stronger had taken its place. A business built on transparency, rebuilt from fracture with care. His eyes drifted back to the photo. Miguel's smile, subtle but real, held a weight of its own. Proof that mistakes didn't have to be life sentences. One chapter had closed. Another was already underway. Jason leaned back in his chair, letting his thoughts drift across time. The past few months returned not as a neat timeline, but in fractured, emotional snapshots. The sting of the mysterious oil in his nose, the warehouse's rusted gate, the harsh light of the lab report, the crushing silence after Miguel's confession. But alongside those memories now was something else, the sound of a final bottle shattering, and the photo from Phoenix. It didn't erase what happened, but it made the story feel whole. In the company's main conference room, Jason stood at the head of the long table. There were no charts or slides, just a truth. Innovation means nothing if it isn't safe and transparent. The room was quiet. Department heads nodded. They had lived the fallout. They didn't need convincing. Jason laid out the future, monthly innovation meetings. Head chefs from every location could present ideas directly. But nothing reached a plate without passing rigorous safety and sourcing checks. Office staff would visit kitchens. Chefs would visit the corporate offices. No walls, no filters. Everyone would see the full picture. Glances were exchanged. Smiles began to form. The structure wasn't just about control. It was about trust. When the meeting ended, it didn't feel like a policy shift. It felt like momentum. Later, Jason walked through the quiet kitchen. The scent of rising dough filled the air. A young chef layered toppings on an experimental pie. "What's this?" Jason asked. "New recipe. For next month's meeting." Jason looked over the ingredients, then asked, "Where's it from?" Without hesitation, the chef handed over a folder. Certificates, dates, approval sheets, all in order. Jason smiled. "Good," he said, patting the young man on the shoulder. The chef grinned, wide and easy. There was nothing to hide. Jason moved on. The kitchen air felt lighter than it had in months. The rules had changed, yes, but so had the heart of the place. Back at his desk, Jason opened a plain envelope. Inside, a handwritten note. "Thank you for being honest. My family still trusts you." He read it slowly, each word sinking in like an anchor. It wasn't long, but it meant more than any financial report ever could. It was proof that doing the right thing, even when it costs everything, mattered. He folded the letter and placed it gently on the corner of his desk. His hand rested there a moment longer. Sunlight spilled across the room. In the distance, the rhythm of the ovens hummed like a heartbeat. Jason leaned back. The storm had passed. Its scars remained, but so did its lessons. And then his phone buzzed. Miguel's name lit the screen. "Just wanted to say thank you again," Miguel said, his voice warm, tinged with humility. Jason smiled. "Keep it up." They spoke for a few minutes, catching up. Miguel shared details about a new recipe he was testing. The conversation was easy, natural. The future, Jason realized, didn't need to forget the past. It just needed to learn from it. Miguel's hands didn't reach for the envelope right away, as if touching it too soon might cause it to vanish, like it wasn't real. Jason didn't press him. Instead, he continued, his voice firm but not cold. "There are conditions, strict supervision, mandatory retraining in food safety, and you'll start from the bottom. No shortcuts." Miguel's voice cracked. "Why?" Jason held his gaze. "Because everyone deserves a chance to make things right, but it's up to you whether you use it." The room fell into a still, reverent hush. Miguel's wife looked up, her expression shifting. Less guarded, more open, a trace of hope flickering in her eyes. Miguel swallowed hard, finally reaching for the envelope. His fingers hovered, then gently touched the paper before lifting it into his lap. "Thank you," he whispered, the words thick in his throat. "I won't waste this, I promise." Jason extended his hand. Miguel hesitated only for a breath, then clasped it firmly. The handshake lingered. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. A fragile, mutual respect, built not on perfection, but honesty. In that moment, the shadow of the past months didn't disappear, but it thinned just enough to let some light through. 3 months later, Jason's phone buzzed on his desk. The message was short. "Miguel's doing great, follows every rule." Attached was a photo. Miguel, in a crisp white apron, stood beaming beside a pizza pulled fresh from the oven. Golden crust, bright toppings, clean, honest. Jason set the phone down and turned toward the window. Outside, the flagship restaurant pulsed with life. Lunch rush in full swing. Servers laughed. Customers leaned into conversations over warm plates. And behind the counter, he knew, a new system was in place. Staff could suggest new ideas, flavors, improvements, but everything went through safety checks before a single bite was served. It wasn't just policy, it was culture. Jason reflected on how close they'd come to collapse. Now something stronger had taken its place. A business built on transparency, rebuilt from fracture with care. His eyes drifted back to the photo. Miguel's smile, subtle but real, held a weight of its own. Proof that mistakes didn't have to be life sentences. One chapter had closed, another was already underway. Jason leaned back in his chair, letting his thoughts drift across time. The past few months returned not as a neat timeline, but in fractured, emotional snapshots. The sting of the mysterious oil in his nose, the warehouse's rusted gate, the harsh light of the lab report, the crushing silence after Miguel's confession. But alongside those memories now was something else. The sound of a final bottle shattering and the photo from Phoenix. It didn't erase what happened, but it made the story feel whole. In the company's main conference room, Jason stood at the head of the long table. There were no charts or slides, just a truth. Innovation means nothing if it isn't safe and transparent. The room was quiet. Department heads nodded. They had lived the fallout. They didn't need convincing. Jason laid out the future. Monthly innovation meetings. Head chefs from every location could present ideas directly, but nothing reached a plate without passing rigorous safety and sourcing checks. Office staff would visit kitchens. Chefs would visit the corporate offices. No walls, no filters. Everyone would see the full picture. Glances were exchanged. Smiles began to form. The structure wasn't just about control. It was about trust. When the meeting ended, it didn't feel like a policy shift. It felt like momentum. Later, Jason walked through the quiet kitchen. The scent of rising dough filled the air. A young chef layered toppings on an experimental pie. "What's this?" Jason asked. "New recipe for next month's meeting." Jason looked over the ingredients, then asked, "Where's it from?" Without hesitation, the chef handed over a folder. Certificates, dates, approval sheets, all in order. Jason smiled. "Good," he said, patting the young man on the shoulder. The chef grinned, wide and easy. There was nothing to hide. Jason moved on. The kitchen air felt lighter than it had in months. The rules had changed, yes, but so had the heart of the place. Back at his desk, Jason opened a plain envelope. Inside, a handwritten note. "Thank you for being honest. My family still trusts you." He read it slowly, each word sinking in like an anchor. It wasn't long, but it meant more than any financial report ever could. It was proof that doing the right thing, even when it costs everything, mattered. He folded the letter and placed it gently on the corner of his desk. His hand rested there a moment longer. Sunlight spilled across the room. In the distance, the rhythm of the ovens hummed like a heartbeat. Jason leaned back. The storm had passed. Its scars remained, but so did its lessons. And then his phone buzzed. Miguel's name lit the screen. "Just wanted to say thank you again," Miguel said, his voice warm, tinged with humility. Jason smiled. "Keep it up." They spoke for a few minutes, catching up. Miguel shared details about a new recipe he was testing. Bright, fresh flavors, all sourced from approved suppliers. "Customers here love it," he said, the pride in his voice unmistakable. Jason listened, genuinely pleased. But a quiet reminder stayed at the back of his mind. Every idea, every ingredient still needed review. The rules weren't there to stifle. They were there to protect. Miguel laughed, joking that his retraining had made him the most paranoid chef in the state, double-checking every label, every delivery. Jason chuckled. "That's exactly the kind of paranoia we want." The conversation wound down naturally, neither man rushing to end it. When the call finally clicked off, Jason found himself still smiling. The connection wasn't just intact. It was stronger, built on truth, not assumption. Some chapters don't close completely. They simply turn the page. Jason leaned back again. A thought crept in. How many stories like this were unfolding in kitchens he hadn't seen yet? Not just here, but across every location, behind every swinging kitchen door where plates flew and silence carried secrets. Not all stories would be dangerous. Some might be uplifting, others heartbreaking, but all were worth knowing. And so, a new commitment took root. He would go back undercover now and then, not to spy, not to trap, but to stand beside his people, to see what they see, to hear what they don't say out loud, to remind himself of where the heart of the business truly lived. His thoughts drifted to that first day at the dish pit. Hands slick with soap, corrected by a new hire who didn't know who he was. There had been humility in that moment. Grounding. This journey hadn't ended. It had changed shape. The danger was gone, but the connection remained. As long as there were kitchens and cooks, there would be stories worth stepping into. The evening air was cool. Dough and cheese scented the breeze. Jason strolled down the block, hands in his pockets, letting the sounds of the neighborhood wash over him. Outside a small corner pizza shop, he paused. Through the glass, families leaned in over checkered tables. Children laughed with mouths full of crust. He thought of Miguel, of Sarah's hushed warning, of Marcus torn between loyalty and truth. Each person had been a thread in a tapestry that could have unraveled completely. And yet, it hadn't. Jason understood with clarity. A business' greatest strength and its greatest risk was always the people. Systems could be improved, but choices? Choices shaped destiny. He watched a waitress kneel to make a child laugh. Connection, care, trust. Those were ingredients too. He turned and walked on. The scent of pizza lingered, as did the thought. Protect your people, and they'll protect the business. Back in his office, he opened the month's food safety report. Every location had passed, some with perfect scores. But it wasn't the scores that moved him. It was the notes. Staff double-checking orders, managers scheduling extra training, cooks proudly logging ingredients. He typed a short message to the entire company. This is how we keep trust. Together. Then he clicked send. Quiet victories. Small truths. The foundation was holding. Jason opened a leather-bound notebook. The May page was still blank. He wrote, May lesson. Transparency doesn't just save a company. It saves people. He set the pen down and looked out the window. The city lights painted the glass in soft golds and silvers. For the first time in months, there was no pressure on his chest. No dread. Only peace. Earned, and a course corrected. Some chapters don't end with applause. They end with breath. He turned off his desk lamp. The streetlights took its place. And somewhere, the next story stirred. Jason knew. It would find him. And when it did, he'd be ready. Because the past wasn't forgotten. It had been transformed.